Welcome back, Careblazers. In today's video, we are going to talk about what you can do to help get your loved one into the car and into the nursing home. So last week's video, we talked about the struggle and just making the decision of whether or not your loved one needs nursing home care. Today's video is going to be all about what to do to help get your loved one into nursing home care, because I'm sure as many of you have experienced or are currently experiencing, just because you've made the decision doesn't mean your loved one's going to necessarily be happy about it and be willing to go. So after you've made the decision to put your loved one in a nursing home, you've researched all of the different nursing home options, you've decided on the one, you've figured out the finances, what insurance and Medicare will pay, you've figured out that you can legally make the decision to put your loved one in a nursing home if they don't want to go. After all of that hard work, it's not over. You've got to actually get your loved one to get in the car and go. So I'm going to share a couple of tips with you that have been helpful to other Careblazers, okay? The approach that you take in order to get your loved one to go to a nursing home really depends on several things. First, it depends on their personality. It also depends on their level of cognitive impairment. So somebody with more mild dementia and kind of knows more about what's going on, they may not be as willing to go as somebody who is so severely impaired they may not even understand what's going on in their surroundings. So the approach that you take, the specific tips that you find helpful that I talk about, you're going to have to pick and choose based on what you know about your loved one. Let's start with the most simple approach first, and that is to talk to your loved one. Now again, this one is probably good for somebody who has more mild dementia and might be able to engage in the conversation, maybe even getting into the moderate stage. But basically, this is where you sit down with your loved one and tell them what's going on. You don't just say, hey, I'm putting you into a nursing home, get in the car and let's go. You talk to them. So one Careblazer in particular, her husband, she was caring for her husband with dementia, and he did not want to go to a nursing home, and she did not want to put him in a nursing home. And for years and years, she did everything for him, took care of him, but it really started to get to the point where it was really dangerous for him. He was finding his insulin and taking too much of it. He was falling every day, multiple times a day. She was just unable to keep up with it. So her heart was broken that she was going to have to place her husband in a nursing home, who they talked with each other earlier in the disease about how they didn't want to make that happen. But what happened with her is she sat her husband down. She told him the reasons why she felt like it was time for nursing home care, because she couldn't keep him safe. Her health was declining, and she didn't want to see anything horrible happened to him in the home because he's had some pretty bad falls. And he still did not like the decision to go to a nursing home, but he was able to hear her out, and they were able to have a decent conversation. And she really took time to answer his questions. She took time to pay attention to his underlying emotion. Again, that's something so important, is just to listen to your loved one, not necessarily even their words, but more the feelings behind the words, the anxiety about going somewhere new, the fear about not even knowing what the place is going to be like. So she took time to address those feelings. She told him she was going to visit him, that she would take him out on day trips, that she was going to make sure it would be a place that they were both okay with, and he could even go with her to tour the place. For her and her husband, this was a good decision, and it was able to work for them. But keep in mind, he still wasn't happy with it, but he was able to sit down and have that conversation. And for that Careblazer in particular, that was enough to get him into the car and move into the nursing home on moving day. Now, another Careblazer in particular was caring for her father, and no matter which way you sliced it or presented it, her father was not having it. He did not want to go to a nursing home, and in fact, he would get quite agitated and angry at the mention of even having to go to a nursing home. But it was really getting to the point where it was completely unsafe for him to be at home anymore. So with this particular Careblazer, we talked about different options that she could consider, and some of these you could consider as well. So for example, she talked about telling her father he had a doctor's appointment, and the doctor's appointment was at this new place, and so the new place would have been the nursing home. So she toyed around with that idea in her mind. She toyed around with the idea of telling her father that she had to go out of town for a couple of weeks and that she wasn't going to be home in order to care for him. And so for that couple of weeks, he had to go stay somewhere temporarily until she came back. She also toyed around with the idea of telling her father it was a trial period, that it was just going to be for a week or two just to see how he liked it. There was plenty of friends, new social activities, everything would be provided for him. He'd have his own space. And she toyed around with just telling him, hey, you'll be there for a week or two, see how you like it. If not, you can come back home. And she also toyed around with the idea of telling him that there was going to be a study, a research study, and she was, he would be a participant in it to help research dementia and those types of things. So there was a lot of different ideas floating around in her mind, but the thing that she struggled with the most about all of these ideas is that they were all lies. It wasn't going to be temporary, unless the nursing home was completely awful and not a good fit for her father, in which case she would just find another nursing home. But her own health was to the point where she could no longer take care of her father, and her own family was feeling neglected and starting to have some difficulty because she wasn't having a lot of time for her own kids and her own husband. Not to mention she was kind of on thin ice with her work for taking off so many days and in the middle of the day to respond to emergencies with her father. So for all of these reasons, she knew she had to get her father in a nursing home, but he was never going to go willingly, and she was trying to come up with ways to get him to go. So in case you missed it, I did do a video on why it is okay to lie to your loved one with dementia when the underlying motivation for lying is actually providing them the best care and keeping in mind their feelings and safety. So if you missed that, I'll link to it here in this video. But in this particular situation, she struggled with it, and she had to figure out what lie she was going to tell her father to get him into a nursing home. Now, the important thing, if you have to go this route, is to really be clear with yourself, be honest with yourself about the reason you're putting your loved one in a nursing home, because it's going to get ugly, it's going to get hard, especially when you finally get your loved one into a nursing home and then they're constantly asking for the first couple of weeks to come home. So that's heartbreaking. So you just have to really keep in mind and be clear, what's the reason you're doing this? And for this particular Careblazer, it was her own health, it was her own family relationships, it was her own financial stability and her own job, all things that are very important long after her loved one, her father, would pass away. Okay, so she had to get really clear on that before she chose which option she wanted to do. Now, the other thing to keep in mind when it gets to the point that you're ready to put your loved one into the car and go to a nursing home, you may want to consider having somebody go with you so that it's not just you and your loved one. Not only can that other person help with any anxiety or irritability that might come along the way in that car ride and with the whole introduction to the nursing home, but not only is this an emotional experience for your loved one with dementia, but it's an emotional experience for you. And it's nice to have that support on the way there, while you're there in the nursing home, and on the way home. So I would encourage you to take a trusted family member or friend, somebody who's really supportive of you in the situation, and bring them along for the ride. All right, Careblazers, I hope this video has been helpful to you. Feel free to leave a comment below and tell me about what you are thinking about doing or have done in particular for your loved one in order to get them into a nursing home. And in case you haven't heard, I made a 29-page Careblazer survival guide filled with tips and helpful information to help you take care of your loved one with dementia without going crazy and without neglecting every area of your life. So if you're interested in getting that free Careblazer guide, click on the link below. And stay tuned for next week's video where I will talk about what you can do to help make the transition to nursing home easier. So after you get your loved one into a nursing home, or even a little bit before you get your loved one into a nursing home, how can you make it so that they are going to be more comfortable in that nursing home when they're there? All right, Careblazers, until next week, bye.